Welcome to the O Horror Podcast. Join me as I take you on a journey of the senses and the mind into the darkness. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's story. "20 Simple Steps to Ventriloquism." Being a ventriloquist is a lot of fun. Anyone from 8 to 80 can learn the basic techniques of this craft with a little practice. If you really want to know about ventriloquism and what it can do for you, just follow these 20 easy steps, and one day you'll find out just how much fun a ventriloquist can have. Step 1. How to hold your mouth. Always practice in front of a mirror. Close your mouth in a natural, relaxed way and part your lips slightly. Stare at your mouth closely in this position until you can see nothing else, as if your mouth were hovering in the midst of nothingness. Step 2. Recite the beginner's alphabet. The first part of the beginner's alphabet has 19 letters. The letters are A, C, D, E, G, H, I, J, K, L, N, O, Q, R, S, T, U, X, and Z. With your mouth in the position described in step 1, recite this part of the alphabet over and over. You may have to do this hundreds or even thousands of times before you get it right. While you master this step, it may seem strange that these sounds are coming out of your mouth while it's not moving. Try not to focus on this phenomenon while your progress as ventriloquist may be hindered. Step 3. Your first sentence. The second part of the alphabet has 7 letters: B, F, M, P, V, W, and Y. If you try to pronounce these letters the same way you did the others, you'll find that you'll have to move your lips. So for the time being, substitute another sound for these letters. For example, try this sentence: The bad boy blew up the big jet by using his brain. Only with your mouth in the position described in step 1, say, The dad doy blew up the dig jet by using his drain. Again, focus strictly on your technique, avoiding any other thoughts or perceptions you may have. Step 4. You say one thing and you think another. Think of the letter B while you're saying the letter D. If you sit in front of the mirror long enough and say the letter D while thinking B, you'll soon have a clear sound enough so that in normal conversation no one will notice a difference. Even you may fail soon to notice that you are saying one thing and thinking another, as this technique becomes second nature to you. Warning, however, if you start to experience tunnel vision or see a kind of black fog forming in the mirror at this stage, immediately stop practicing for at least 48 hours. Step 5. Use th or f instead of f. Instead of saying F, make it come out F if it comes out in the middle or at the end of a word. If it comes at the beginning of a word, just say th. Example: Without any effort, I frankly feel like a trifle. Now say, without any effort, I frankly feel like a trifle. This is where the real challenge of ventriloquism begins to practice over and over, many thousands of times in front of a mirror. For a while, you will sound as if you have a speech impediment and may not even be able to recognize your own voice, but don't give up. Later, your voice will become your dummy voice, which will be nothing like the voice you recognize as your own. Step 6. How to say the letters M, P, and V. Instead of saying M, say N. Try this sentence: My mind made the mad rummy melt. This is not difficult for N. It's a combination of M and N. You say, 9 made the nad runny melt. Even though most of us have never made a mad rummy melt with our mind, this is all part of dummy talk. Do the same with P, using T in its place for the sentence, the proud professor put his pupil together. Say, the troud professor tut his tootle together. For V, use the while you think V. For the sentence, not every ventriloquist is a greater ventriloquist, say, not every ventriloquist is a greater ventriloquist. Of course, you may think this is all complete nonsense, but a lot of things people say, even most things, are complete nonsense. This is not the ventriloquist's concern. Step 7. W is tricky, but you can do it. If you say the letter W as it sounds, it will come out as double U. It's fairly easy, isn't it? But now take the word wish, as in, I wish I was a greater ventriloquist. Which you can't say without the flutter of the lips, not even if you say it 1,000 times. So here's where you'll need to practice. Make a sound, something like wish. Say it over and over until it sounds enough like wish, so that it can pass for that word, just as many things pass for other things in this world. Step 8. Getting to know your dummy. Now that you've practiced the first 7 steps and can talk without moving your lips, you're ready to begin the real work, getting to know your dummy. Your new dummy is quite real looking, isn't it? Or at least it will seem real when you can make it talk like a real person, sometimes, but not too often, even when it isn't talking. These special dolls are made with care and are meant to last your whole lifetime. Now, what is your dummy's name? What does it like to do? Who does it look like? This will take some time to figure out, but spending time with your dummy and thinking about it is a good idea. Look at it in the eyes, just like you would anyone else. Talk to it. My pal's name is Reggie McRascal. A dummy needs a ridiculous name like that. Reggie is just about as big as an average 5-year-old boy, has light brown hair, real hair, not painted, a little pug nose, a knowing smile when his mouth is closed, and a great goofy grin when his mouth is open. Reggie has large eyes that are light blue glass and can blink either one or wink both of them at the same time. His eyebrows, real hair again, move up and down just like yours. In fact, I'd bet your dummy looks just like my Reggie. Sit down on a chair in front of a mirror and carefully put your ventriloquist dummy on your knee. Be sure to hold onto your dummy tightly with both hands. Your dummy is hollow. Insert your right or left hand into his back and find his controls. Practice moving his head and his mouth. Think about your dummy moving his head while you move his head. Think about his mouth opening and closing while you open it. Think about these things until you don't have to think about them anymore. Soon you'll be doing these things without having to put these actions into your head. Step 9. How a dummy needs to move. Can you ride a bicycle? If you can, then you know how easy it is, how automatic. You think about turning left and your hands move and your whole body leans, which causes the bicycle to turn left, sharply or smoothly. Your legs pumping make the bicycle speed up or slow down, and your legs or hands put on the brakes just right, depending on where you're going and the terrain you're riding upon. All complicated actions which are performed by you automatically. That's how a dummy needs to move. His eyes must move around, scanning the room, just like yours might. His mouth must open and close in perfect concert with your subconscious mind throwing. See steps 1 to 7. Simultaneously, the dummy's eyebrows may move to emphasize a point or a joke. Maybe his eyelids even move down halfway when a dummy is making a sarcastic comment or an angry remark. This step may take more than hundreds or even thousands of hours to perfect as you stare at yourself and your dummy in the mirror. Again, the warning about the back fog applies here. After enough practice, your dummy will move just as easily and naturally as you do. Step 10. They're all dummies. Step 9 directed you to practice using your dummy until it moved, as naturally as you do. But how can a block of wood carved and painted in the likeness of a human being ever hope to be natural? Before we answer this crucial question, you're going to need to answer a question of a different but no less crucial sort. What do you wish to achieve through the art of ventriloquism? If your aim is simply to become a proficient showman, skilled enough to achieve some modicum of success through performing at children's birthday parties, local variety shows, and community theatre acts, do not read any further. Study and apply steps 1 to 9, but do not read on. Your tutelage is complete, and with enough practice, you may very well become competent enough, even an excellent show business ventriloquist. However, If steps 1 to 9 do not satisfy you, if manipulating your dummy seems limited and frustrating and even simplistic, if you have an overwhelming desire, a hunger, if you will, to know what greater ventriloquism is, what it can do for you in your life, read on. Again, you must continue reading only if you really want to know what the secret of greater ventriloquism has to offer. Fine, now that's out the way, again, how can a block of wood carved and painted in the likeness of a human being ever hope to be natural? Easy. Have you ever had a pet? Many at-home animals are taught to behave using commands, which may be direct, like stay or sit, but which might also involve subtle gestures or sounds, all of which you may make without conscious thought. You push their levers, if you will, and pull their cords, so to speak. So make them do what you want them to do. We can control our pets without effort, without thinking about it. We do one thing and think another. And what about a relationship with other human animals? What if we actively, knowingly seek to influence, or, if we're honest, control the behaviour of our child, our lady friend, our co-worker? This is no outlandish concept. In fact, there have been countless words written on this very subject, and my own ventriloquism practice has led me to my favourite method, briefly outlined as follows. The practitioner begins to assert dominance over a human being by subtly mimicking their subject's gestures and vocal patterns. A good ventriloquist learns this method eventually, naturally. And that's only the beginning. A lady friend of mine, for instance, often claims that I am continuously being passive-aggressive, when in fact, I've been slowly, deliberately pushing her levers for years. I have her doing and even saying exactly what I want her to do and say, and after many years of practice and more practice, it comes as easily as throwing my voice or animating my Reggie's head and mouth to the words I throw. In fact, if you practice steps 1 to 10 for very long, you will eventually learn all you need to know about controlling the animals around you, human or not, bar none. One more time. How can a block of wood, carved and painted in the likeness of a human being, ever hope to be natural? Now you know the answer. Whether you're controlling the movements of that block of wood or controlling just how your lady friend behaves at a dinner party, either will seem perfectly natural to a third-party observer, even if you know better. Step 10 is your first true step towards becoming a greater ventriloquist, but it is quite a simple one. Simply remember that your dummy, your pets, your family, and your friends have one thing in common with each other. They're all dummies. With practice, you will be amazed at how they'll dance to the tune of your voice. Step 11. You need help. Let's face it, friend, you need help. You may understand that mastery of ventriloquism takes many thousands of days of continuous practice, but trust me on this. Your family and friends won't understand, not even your current or potential lady friend. You've got to find yourself a real mentor, someone who understands ventriloquism so much better than you do, someone who can guide you and shape you to face the increasingly complex and difficult steps ahead. A master ventriloquist. Yes, you've got a real problem, and so did I some time ago, but I found the help I needed, and so can you. Note, what you're about to read represents a departure from the approach, tone, and content that this instructional manual has taken heretofore. Bear with me, and an open mind is key to your future mastery of greater ventriloquism. After years of fruitless research and disappointment, I found my own mentor one memorable night in the unlikeliest of ways. As with any other late evening, I was asleep in the bed next to my lady friend, Margaret, with a pet dog resting against my feet, just as it was trained to do so, and I was dreaming. In this particular and very vivid dream, I was acting as a member of a secret service organisation, looking into shady goings-on at a small to mid-sized airport. Passengers were disappearing, especially people arriving and departing on late-night flights. Somehow, these disappearances were connected to a terrible catastrophe that my superiors felt was inevitable if my investigation was unsuccessful. At the time, I knew all the details of the situation, including the consequences of failure, but as is often the nature of dreams, the particulars of this intelligence were eradicated by subsequent consciousness. As I conducted my investigation, I started becoming aware of a peculiar certainty. The passengers and the flight attendants, the pilots, the security guards, and the ticket tellers, and even the airport itself were not very real. I must stress this point. I was in no way aware that I was dreaming, but nonetheless was becoming ever more convinced that the airport and all the people in it were not real. A sense of otherworldly wrongness in everything struck me as I reported these bizarre findings via my secret agent earpiece, explaining to my superiors all I was observing in minute detail, and stressing again and again my feeling of falseness and unreality in every aspect of the airport and its temporal, fly-by-night citizens. I assure you, a smooth, rich voice buzzed through my secret agent earpiece, you'll be unmolested. My employer then informed me that the secret of the night airport was reportedly buried somewhere on the grounds between the short-term parking decks and the departing floor of the airport terminal. This suited me fine, as it meant I could continue to work in relative solitude, away from the unnerving airport unpersons. As I walked through the automatic glass doors of the empty baggage claim area into a sodium-lit night, I began to feel certain that I was on the brink of something dreadful, wonderful enlightenment. My reverie was interrupted by the sight of a soundless helicopter with the indistinct bright blue and green lettering upon it, swooping over the parking deck and landing on one side of the otherwise empty arrival roadway. A very large and tall man with a nondescript, shiny face and greaseback blonde hair stepped out of the helicopter. He was wearing a dark business suit and mirrored sunglasses and strode confidently towards me, holding out a huge gloved right hand as if offering assistance. I instinctively shied away from him as he reached out for me, particularly focusing on the stranger's left hand, which was obtrusely hidden behind his expansive back. "My name is Vox. Let me help you," he said in a distant, monotone, and strangely echoing voice. That voice, so faint yet so crisp in its enunciation, sounded like it was emanating from an empty school gymnasium. As Mr. Fox, moving closer, reached out to me, I thrust out my right arm in an attempt to block that hidden left hand of his. Shifting my eyes back, I realized too late that his extended right hand now held a large syringe, which Mr. Fox deftly plunged into the side of my neck. Everything went black. "This will help me put you back together," Mr. Fox's voice tonelessly echoed. Disoriented and blind, I felt the massive needle twisting brutally back and forth as if searching for a vein, just before a horrible burning sensation began coursing throughout my body. As the needle twisted to the left, I could feel my head involuntarily twisting to the left. As the needle twisted to the right, my head was savagely wrenched in that direction. "None of this is happening," Mr. Vox whispered. The awful sensations abruptly ceased, and I opened my eyes to the half-lit bedroom where I had been sleeping. After the dream's conclusion, far from coming to my conscious senses, my feelings of unreality grew more distant and acute, and every waking moment I lay in bed, hearing Mr. Fox's voice echoing again and again in my mind, replaying the events of the benighted airport, and looking around my dark bedroom as if upon the face of an alien world. Margaret was in the throes of her own private dream as I lay paralysed next to her. Even this beloved lady friend of mine seemed unfamiliar and sinister in the darkness of my bedroom, a living automaton controlled by an unknown master. In the bedroom half-light, without my glasses on, my lady friend's face, now facing mine, was a blur. Her visage was almost formless in the dim-lit bedroom. In the middle of the night, seemed almost grotesquely vast. 2 black holes where her eyes should be, were her eyes open in her sleep, apparently staring at me, and moving, gaping rectangle of darkness where her mouth should be. Her head shifted away to her right and then again towards me and back and forth as she dreamed, clutching her pillow. Suddenly, the movement stopped as the gaping dark holes of her eyes locked onto mine. Nothing was talking as Vox. It was talking through him. A voice echoed as if from the depths of an empty gymnasium, and I was certain these words were emanating from my lady friend's own mouth. Since that night, there have been so many more nighttime experiences like this, so many lessons learned the hard way, and a great deal of exhausting pain and fear. But don't be discouraged. Suffering and exhaustion are both key to your future mastery of greater ventriloquism. So pay attention to your own dreams. As you work on controlling the animal dummies around you as prescribed in Step 10, your ventriloquist mentor will find you, just like Mr. Vox found me. Just you wait and see. Step 12. Remove yourself from animal dummies. I mentioned earlier that sacrifices would need to be made at some point, remember? If you've chosen to pursue greater ventriloquism, and I hope for your sake that you have since you've read this far, you've probably already discovered that managing your ventriloquism practice and real-world activities and relationships simultaneously is a difficult, if not impossible, task. Believe me, I understand. As you read the following personal anecdote, don't be surprised if you find yourself in my position soon. My aforementioned lady friend Margaret came in from a hard day's work some time back, not long after my first session with Mr. Vox. On this particular evening, Margaret was making quite a ruckus upon entering our old modest cottage, slamming the front door and roughly grabbing dishes from the sink, fairly throwing them into our dishwasher. "Fuck!" Our next-door neighbours no doubt heard her bellowing. "Language, language," I said in Reggie's peculiar falsetto. In moments, the bedroom door banged open, revealing my exquisitely beautiful and livid lady friend in her best pink and, to my mind, overly form-fitting business suit. Her face drained of all colour as she growled, "You asshole! You could have exploded the goddamn dishwasher!" "Language?" Feigning alarm, I covered Reggie's mouth with my hand and grinned sheepishly, an expression which had historically softened my lady friend's bouts of ill temper. Not this time. One side of Margaret's mouth had shifted down and her head began shaking slightly in a gesture of angry disbelief. A bad sign. "How about you put that little fucker down for a second and get some shit done around here?" "Margaret," I calmly replied, imitating her characteristic slight shoulder shrug, seeking to pacify her anger with a show of understanding. "You're upset. You're goddamn right I'm upset, Joe. It's bad enough you waking me up in the middle of the night to tell me about your boring-ass nightmares on and on, but the house looks like shit. I mean, what have you been doing all day?" "Honey pie, that's not really fair," I replied, indicating through a series of a mimicked eye and eyebrow motions that I was stung by her words, as if she would just be in my place. I continued, emulating her calmest, even most pitched tone. "You know I've been working on this skit for the Halloween show. It's taken a lot of diligent work." "Work?" Margaret replied. "Work? I work 12 fucking hours a day. 12 fucking hours. In a soulless corporate law firm, no less. Because you can't seem to hold down a real job. I mean, I'm working all the fucking time here, and you're sitting around the house playing with that creepy doll day and night." "Darling," I sighed heavily in spite of myself, letting the dummy act slip ever so slightly. "We've been through this over and over. Reggie is a dummy, not a doll, and ventriloquism is indeed a real job. And not only that, it's a very difficult job that takes hundreds and... Oh yeah? I know. Hundreds and thousands of hours, right?" "Baby," I replied. Well, okay, you're totally right." I decided to change my tactics, adapting to this improbable turn of events. Turning my head on one side, slumping and slightly pouting, I sighed again, and this time my imitation of my lady friend felt obvious, inartful. "Don't do that baby shit. You manipulate me, Joseph. Do you know that? This fucking passive-aggressive martyr bullshit. I know what you're doing." "What?" Reggie asked. "You're changing the fucking subject. Just like you always do. You're trying to make me feel guilty when you're the one to blame. But you know what? It's been 3 goddamn years now, Joe. You realise that? 3 fucking years." Language? I foolishly let Reggie blurt out. Margaret's tense body and face became utterly still for a moment. "Joseph Robert Snavely, so help me God, if you don't stop correcting me like a goddamn animal through that piece of shit doll of yours, I'm going to pull its ugly fucking head off and throw it through the goddamn window. I mean it. Fine, sweetie, I replied, instinctively placing a protective right arm around Reggie's torso. I'm sorry, I trailed off, horrified, stuttering uncharacteristically, at a loss for what to do or say that might push the argument in my favour. You know I'm not feeling well right now, and you know I'm not sleeping well. What I said about the airport last night, remember? It will all be okay soon. Though Mr. Vox said, I'll get more ventriloquist gigs soon. It's just that more gigs? And how much money do you bring home from those? Next to nothing. That's how much. You're leeching off me, Joe, of my income in my house. How long has it been since you had a real job anyway? You're not even making sense half the time anymore, Joe. All this crazy shit about your dreams and what's his name, Mr. Vox. Margaret's meticulously plucked eyebrows furrowed. Then she quietly said, Look, Joe, I think you need help. You're just sitting around playing with yourself all day, chatting it up with this little doll like it's a real person and babbling about your dreams like they're real. Like a fucking toddler, not a man. I'm sorry, but you're just not pulling your weight around here, Joe, and you haven't for a goddamn time. Margaret's tone suddenly cooled and was unfamiliar. There was a finality to it. Oh, that's not true, Toots. Reggie's strained voice broke in, his eyelids suggestively half open, his bushy eyebrows moving rapidly up and down. Joey's full-time job is to make your sexy tush happy, and if you know what I mean. Margaret breathed in deeply once, and her face went blank. For a moment I thought I had won the day in spite of everything. Margaret would start chuckling now, and would apologise for a little temper tantrum. Instead, she turned to Reggie for the first time, directly addressing my dummy, and as she said, Joey's full-time job is to make my sexy tush happy? Well, you know what, Reg? Old buddy, old pal? Joey hasn't been doing that job right for quite some time now either, if you know what I mean. Involuntarily, Reggie broke out into gales of high-pitched laughter at my expense as I gaped at Margaret, sincerely humiliated and showing it. This was a disaster, and I realised with disbelief that the situation and my one and only lady friend had gotten completely out of my control for the first time since I met her. Even the gorfing dummy on my lap seemed to be unconsciously conspiring with Margaret against me, and I was starting to panic as my sense of helplessness grew. I stared, open-mouthed, speechless, and my lady friend regarded the pair of us, Reggie and I, sitting on the edge of the bed, me slumped over without a shirt in my old torn red boxers, and Reggie wearing his black bat Halloween costume, complete with diaphanous wings, bat ears and sparkles. At this sight, Margaret's visage became softer, her eyes moistening ever so slightly, full of pity and, could it be yes, it was repulsion? Who was pushing her levers? I can't do this anymore, Joe. I'm sorry. You better leave now. Who is he? Reggie screeched, taking both Margaret and me even by surprise. Now it was my lady friend's turn to gape, speechless, and it didn't take me long to interpret Margaret's speechlessness as guilt. I, even the great ventriloquist, Joe Snavely, had been cuckolded. I see, I managed to say, feeling a formal numbness within my body begin to crawl, and I distantly began to feel certain that this whole scene was staged. Just an act, even if the nauseating pain in my stomach felt acutely real. I continued, hollowly, I'll just leave you, and your new gentleman friend then, to it. A hint of malice involuntarily crept in my voice, though, as I added, be seeing you, animal dummy. And that, as they say, was that. I packed my belongings, put Reggie carefully back into his cushion-made black leather suitcase, and hit the road. I'd been so confident, so cocksure, that I knew how to work my lady friend inside out like the dummy she was, and is. It seems that my control over her was not as complete as I thought it was, or perhaps I had lost the control I once had. Maybe I lost interest. I think in retrospect that she had been pushing my levers and pulling my cords as much as I was pulling hers. Perhaps more so. I certainly didn't see the affair with the local associate termini coming in. In any case, I didn't care for that any more than I cared for the Goldberger Dummy Manufacturing Corporation rejecting my revisions to Step 1 and to 9, and rejecting both Steps 10 and 11 in their entirety. To think that inspiring ventriloquists like you, the world over, are even now trying to master their art by simple consonant substitution and rudimentary dummy manipulation alone. You all deserve better than this, which is why I am revising my complete manuscript with Steps 1 to 11 fully intact. Moreover, I'm expanding this manual well beyond its original steps. I can assure you of this. The full steps, once they are complete, will be made available to the masses in their unmolested form. With Mr. Vox's tutelage supporting my efforts, I am confident that the proper and complete version of the manual will be picked up and disseminated by a major publisher shortly after I'm finished. Having a personal advocate like Mr. Vox to look after my interest is such a relief to me, especially during such trying times. And I'm actually feeling glad to be done with these real-world trivialities, which should be unrelated to the important work ahead of me. I've been so tired of playing animal dummy games. Enough. It's high time to get back to our subject, my pupils. Have you practiced Steps 1 to 10? Have you practiced these steps every day, diligently? Have you spent uncountable hours in front of the mirror, throwing your voice, lips never fluttering? Does your dummy have a life and a voice as real to you as any soul, human or non-human, you've ever known? Have you at least tried to influence or control the so-called sentient beings around you? And finally, if you answered yes to all of the above, is your ventriloquist mentor in contact with you, personally guiding you along the path to greater ventriloquism as you continue your practice as per Step 11? If not, don't bother reading on. You're not ready yet. However, if you have earnestly attempted to master Steps 1 to 11 and have found a legitimate instructor to guide your practice, it is imperative that you immediately remove yourself from daily contact with other animals, human or not, as much as possible. You see, Mr. Vox taught me, in his way, not long ago, that as much as I wanted and tried to push the levers of animal dummies who live with me and around me, they were like my former lady friend, or like the Goldberger corporate office manager, moving my levers too. They were using money or shows of affection or shame or other similar tools to manipulate me, to actually change my behaviour in random ways that non-ventriloquists could never truly understand or appreciate. Once, my former lady friend kicked me out of my own house. Mr. Vox convinced me to immediately remove myself from all of them. Static. Mr. Vox's voice echoed tonelessly in my ear one night, after a particularly brutal lesson. It's all static. And he was, as usual, correct. Aside from their literally sickening behavioural infections, animal dummies have just too many unknown levers and cords for even a master ventriloquist like me to pull and find. Who has time for it all? Even non-human animals, so similar to their human counterparts, can be influenced by factors outside of a lone ventriloquist's control, and that lack of control can lead to the ventriloquist being controlled despite his best efforts. Dummies dumbly pulling a ventriloquist's cords. Unacceptable. Yes, immediately remove yourself from animal dummies of any kind. Surround yourself with the non-sentient variety. The fact is this. No matter how meticulous or consistent your practice is, it is practically impossible to make an animal dummy move and speak just the way you want it to move and speak, and it's exhausting to keep it up. Are the basic instructions stated in Step 10, i.e. they're all dummies, erroneous then? Not at all. On the contrary, trying to master Step 10 is key to your growth towards becoming a greater ventriloquist, even if you ultimately fail after tens of thousands of attempts, and believe me, you inevitably will. This practice, and this practice alone, will lead you to Step 13 and beyond.